There's a precise moment when the balance of power shifts, and it's almost invisible. It doesn't happen when you argue. It doesn't happen when you cry. It doesn't happen when you finally say everything you've been keeping inside. It happens when you stop reacting. When you stop explaining yourself. When you stop defending your emotions. When you stop giving energy to someone who has been feeding off it for too long. And it's at that moment that the narcissist senses something they're not prepared for: they're losing control. Not slowly. Not gradually. But suddenly. Because control, in a narcissistic dynamic, isn't based on strength, but on predictability. They know how you react. They know which words trigger guilt. Which silences trigger fear. Which behaviors cause you to relapse into insecurity. And the moment those patterns stop working, something inside them breaks. So, let me ask a question that may seem uncomfortable at first, but is profoundly enlightening. What happens when someone who depends on controlling others realizes they can no longer control you? Most people assume the answer is indifference. That they give up. That they move on. But, psychologically, the opposite happens. What you witness when their behavior intensifies, the anger, the confusion, the sudden kindness, the victimization, is not strength. It's panic. Because narcissistic control isn't about you as a person. It's about you as a function. You were there to regulate their emotions. To stabilize their identity. To absorb the guilt, the confusion, and the emotional overload so they wouldn't have to face them alone. And the moment you stop playing that role, the illusion crumbles. That's why your calmness disturbs them. Why your silence seems threatening. Why your emotional detachment provokes reactions that seem irrational or extreme. You didn't become cold. You didn't change for the worse. You simply stopped participating in a dynamic that required you to disappear. In this video, we'll explore what really happens inside the narcissistic mind when control is lost and, more importantly, what this moment reveals about you. Because what seems like chaos now is actually clarity forming. And if something inside you already feels that this is a turning point, that you're seeing patterns you couldn't see before, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Not as a favor. Not out of habit. But as a quiet declaration to yourself that you're ready to understand what you've lived through, and move forward with awareness. Let's continue. To understand their reaction, we need to step away from surface behavior and look at the psychology underneath. A narcissist does not experience relationships as mutual exchanges. They experience them as systems of regulation. Every interaction unconsciously answers one question. How does this person make me feel about myself? Control becomes the method. Emotional responses become currency. Approval is given strategically. Affection is withdrawn to punish. Confusion is introduced to destabilize your sense of reality. Over time, you are conditioned, not through logic, but through emotional repetition, to explain yourself, doubt yourself, and stay emotionally available even when it hurts. But conditioning only works as long as participation continues. The moment you stop reacting, the system breaks. Your silence interrupts the feedback loop. Your calm creates uncertainty. Your detachment removes leverage. And here is where many people misunderstand what happens next. They expect distance to create peace. But instead, it creates escalation. Why? Because from a psychological perspective, your detachment represents ego threat. The narcissistic identity depends on being central, superior, or necessary. When that position is challenged, the nervous system reacts with alarm. This is why behaviors intensify. Why accusations appear. Why guilt is amplified. Why past events are rewritten. You've changed. You're cold now. You're selfish. These statements are not observations, they are alarms. They signal that the old strategies are failing. What you're witnessing is not emotional expression. It is loss of control. And that loss feels existential to someone whose identity was built on dominance rather than self-awareness. If you've noticed that the moment you stopped reacting was the moment everything intensified, if the chaos increased when you became calm, leave a comment. Sometimes recognizing the pattern out loud is the moment it loses its grip. Here is the part that changes everything. Their reaction is not proof that you're wrong. It is proof that you are no longer accessible to manipulation. When you stop seeking validation, you stop being controllable. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim authority over your reality. When you stop reacting, you regain ownership of your nervous system. This is why narcissists fear emotional independence more than confrontation. Anger still engages. Arguments still feed the dynamic. But calm removes the stage entirely. Your stability becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, they are forced to see the emptiness they spent a lifetime avoiding. That is why detachment often triggers one final attempt to regain control. Old wounds are resurfaced. Fear is activated. Guilt is weaponized. But this moment is not a setback. It is a test of awareness. Because the moment you understand that these reactions are not about you, their power dissolves. You stop internalizing blame. You stop questioning your perception. You stop shrinking yourself to maintain peace. If this perspective is helping you see your experience more clearly, leave a comment. This will allow you to share your own experiences with us. This channel exists for people who are done surviving emotionally, and ready to understand what they've lived through with clarity and strength. Let's continue. There is a phase in this process that almost no one talks about, and yet, it may be the most important one. It's the moment after you understand the dynamic. After you recognize the manipulation. After you stop reacting. Because awareness alone is powerful, but integration is what makes it permanent. At this stage, something subtle begins to change inside you. Your nervous system starts to recalibrate. Your mind becomes quieter. And for the first time in a long time, you are no longer living in constant anticipation of someone else's emotional state. This is where true freedom begins, not on the surface, but in the body. For a long time, your system was trained to stay alert. To scan for mood shifts. To adjust your behavior to avoid conflict, withdrawal, or punishment. That hypervigilance was not weakness. It was adaptation. But now, as the old dynamic loses power, your system has to learn something new, safety without control. And that can feel unfamiliar at first. You may notice moments of guilt that appear out of nowhere. An urge to explain yourself, even when no explanation is needed. A strange discomfort with calm, as if peace itself feels suspicious. That doesn't mean you're going backward. It means your system is reorganizing. Psychologically, this is what happens when a person steps out of a conditioned role. The mind searches for old scripts, not because they're healthy, but because they're familiar. And this is where many people unknowingly sabotage their own healing. They mistake discomfort for danger. They interpret calm as emptiness. They confuse peace with loss. But what you are experiencing is not loss. It is space. Space where your identity is no longer defined by reaction. Space where your worth is no longer negotiated through emotional labor. Space where you can finally hear your own thoughts, without interference. This is the phase where you stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and begin asking, "What do I actually want now?" And that question is revolutionary. Because for the first time, your decisions are not shaped by fear of abandonment, conflict, or emotional chaos. They are shaped by alignment. You begin to notice how different grounded relationships feel. How calm no longer needs explanation. How respect doesn't require performance. And slowly, almost quietly, your identity shifts. You are no longer the understanding one. Or the patient one. Or the one who holds everything together. You become something far more powerful, someone who is internally anchored. And here is the truth that solidifies everything. Once your nervous system learns this new baseline, manipulation loses its grip permanently. Because control only works on people who doubt their inner stability. And if you're listening to this, something inside you already knows, you are no longer that person. If this journey of understanding resonates with you, if these words are helping you put language to experiences you felt but never fully named, consider subscribing to the channel. Not for content, but as a quiet alignment with your own clarity, and the life you are actively building. Let's continue. There comes a point in this journey where the question is no longer about them. You've already understood the dynamic. You've already recognized the manipulation. You've already stopped reacting the way you once did. And now, something quieter, but far more powerful, begins to emerge. You start noticing how much of your energy was once spent monitoring. Monitoring tone. Monitoring mood. Monitoring timing. Monitoring yourself. That constant inner vigilance was never random. It was the cost of staying connected to someone who required you to stay emotionally adjustable. But as control dissolves, that vigilance no longer has a place to land. And this is when many people feel a strange, unexpected sensation. Disorientation. Not because something is wrong, but because something familiar is gone. For a long time, your sense of safety was externally referenced. You felt okay when things were calm. You felt anxious when they weren't. Your inner world was tethered to someone else's emotional state. Now, that tether has been cut. And the nervous system doesn't immediately celebrate freedom. First, it asks, where do I place my attention now? This is the moment where power truly changes location. Not in confrontation. Not in boundaries spoken out loud. But in attention reclaimed. You begin to notice that you no longer need to scan the room emotionally. You don't need to predict reactions. You don't need to pre-edit your words to avoid conflict. And slowly, something radical happens. Your presence returns to yourself. This is where the old dynamic finally collapses, not because the other person changes, but because you are no longer oriented around them. Psychologically, this is what autonomy feels like. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's deeply ordinary, and deeply stabilizing. You begin to sense when something feels right or wrong without having to justify it. You trust your discomfort. You respect your calm. And perhaps for the first time, you realize how much of your identity was built around being responsive, accommodating, understanding, not because it was who you were, but because it was what kept things stable. But stability built on self-erasure is not stability. It's suppression. And what you are experiencing now is the nervous system learning a new truth. You can be safe without being small. This is also where guilt often tries one last time to enter the conversation. Thoughts like, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should explain one more time. Maybe I owe them closure. But guilt, in this context, is not moral insight. It is residue. Residue from a system that trained you to prioritize harmony over truth. You are not responsible for managing someone else's inability to face themselves. You are not obligated to remain accessible to dynamics that cost you your clarity. And here's the quiet truth that seals this phase: once your sense of self is internally anchored, control no longer has a point of entry. Not because you're guarded, but because you're whole. If, while listening to this, you recognized yourself, if certain sentences felt uncomfortably accurate, or strangely relieving, leave a comment. Not to explain your story, just to acknowledge your awareness. Sometimes the most powerful shift begins when we realize, I'm not alone in this. There is a quiet strength that emerges when a chapter truly ends. Not the kind of strength that needs to announce itself. Not the kind that seeks validation or recognition. But the kind that settles into the body and changes the way you move through the world. That is the strength you are touching now. What you've been through was not a failure of character. It was not naivety. It was not weakness. It was conditioning. You adapted to a dynamic that required you to be alert, flexible, emotionally available, and self-sacrificing in order to keep things from falling apart. And for a long time, that adaptation worked, not because it was healthy, but because it helped you survive. But survival is not the same as alignment. And the moment you stopped reacting, the moment you chose awareness over fear, the dynamic lost its power. You didn't win by confronting. You didn't win by proving anything. You won by returning to yourself. That return may have felt disorienting at first. Calm can feel unfamiliar after chaos. Silence can feel strange after constant explanation. But what you are experiencing now is not emptiness. It is space. Space to listen to your own thoughts. Space to feel your own emotions without managing someone else's. Space to build a life that does not revolve around tension, unpredictability, or emotional labor. Your nervous system is learning a new baseline. One where peace is not followed by punishment. One where boundaries do not require justification. One where connection does not demand self-erasure. This is not the end of your growth. It is the foundation of it. From this place, your choices will be different. Your relationships will be different. Your sense of self will be quieter and stronger. You will no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You will no longer confuse control with care. And you will no longer doubt your perception simply because someone else needs you to. The clarity you've gained is not something you can lose. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. And while there may still be moments of doubt or old emotional echoes, they no longer define you. They pass through, they do not take over. You are not here to be managed. You are not here to be controlled. You are not here to shrink so that someone else can feel powerful. You are here to belong to yourself. And that, quietly and steadily, is exactly what you are doing now. Take this clarity with you. Let it guide you. And trust that the version of you emerging from this process is not fragmented, but whole. Until the next video.